This world is beautiful. This world is dark and ugly. It is peopled by races so vast, it is easy to lose track. There are species of animals, plants, and insects we have never seen before, nor heard of. Each time, we are certain it all will end. The world continues to thrive. We don't know all of its secrets, and it would seem that we aren't meant to. Exploration is the best means of discovery. Experience, the best teacher. A limit has been placed upon us. We die sooner. Our knowledge is locked away in a vault somewhere to increase profit gains. And wars create fear and upheaval. Always kept on our toes and off balance, it is rare that we can breathe easy for a moment and enjoy life. I often wonder if our ancestors endured the same things. Did they plow a field and look up at the sky, wondering when the next comet would fall from the sky and bring certain destruction? Did they see a plague sweeping through the towns and villages and think it was the epidemic to end all human life? What did they think about all day long? How did they gain knowledge beyond the edge of their land or city? Aristotle and Plato recorded much for us to peruse. I wonder if they knew that millions would still be taught by their philosophies to this day. One particular statement Aristotle made gave me pause. He wrote of Pelasgians, ancestors that lived in Greece before his time, people that spoke of a time before our luminary, the moon. What he said next would take me down a long and winding road. He said that they came from an island that sunk beneath the waves of the sea. Göbekli Tepe, Nan Madol, the Banali rice fields, the artifacts of Santa Rosa Island off the coast of California, Hawaiian history, the stone calendar in Romania, structures in Peru, Tiwanaku, the pyramids in China, the great networks of tunnels in South Africa and Turkey. These places all predate our recorded human history, some of which are said to be 12,000 years old, or older. There are ancient languages no one knows how to speak, chiseled into stone, statues and spheres no one can explain in isolated places. Archaeologists struggle to understand who built them, and why. We are taught as children that the ancients could not be as wise as us without modern science, and that their understanding of the world around them was so primitive, they could not possibly have had intimate knowledge of the universe, or the way our solar system works. We laugh and scoff at those who thought the world was much smaller than it actually is, and call previous civilizations hunter-gatherers who roamed the earth in search of food, but could not have been intelligent enough to settle down and build cities with commerce, laws, and trade. No, indeed, we say, they could not have understood agriculture, nor the way a fetus grows in the womb. The concept of time must have been too far ahead of their intellect as well as language. They tell us we were once no better than animals, so we look to the stars for answers. Perhaps an alien intelligence enabled the human population to make the leap from caveman to modern man. We pat ourselves on the back, certain that we know and understand the very ground we walk on better than anyone who came before us. And yet, the clues all around us remain as silent as petrified stones, waiting to be discovered. I propose that there were once civilizations far greater than what exists today, and that the Earth was once in a different configuration. I pull from stories of some of our oldest cultures, the very ones that still live in accordance to ancient beliefs, that we must respect the earth and live in harmony upon it. These record keepers claim they came from a large mass of land that now resides under the ocean depths. Each one tells a creation story that takes place after a cataclysmic end, an end that happened because they ignored the warnings that came well in advance of certain destruction, the same sort of warning we ignore today. Beginning with the Hopi, it is clear that they feel their role is to protect the heart of the earth. As we will see, the number 4 is quite significant, and the heart is in the Four Corners area of North America. They claim to come from beneath the ground, emerging from a Sipapu to reclaim life upon the surface and begin anew. Their records speak of 3 previous wipes, an ice age, a volcanic age, and a great flood that cleansed the earth. They claim that we are rapidly approaching a 4th cleansing, one that will scorch the earth if we do not change our ways. They also claim that we have a choice. We can change our future if we want to, but we have to want to. It would seem that an island in the Atlantic was lost after the landmass in the Pacific, and both led to the stories of failure told worldwide by almost every culture. The Samoans in Hawaii call the lost landmass Balutu. Each time they recite the Kamuli Pool, they tell the story of the genealogy of their kings, and of a warrior wave that took their former high kingdom. In Thailand, they have placed a golden pillar in a Lak Muon, their sacred center. The original pillar was from the temple of their lost land, an island that sunk under the sea in total destruction. The pillar is a reminder. After the original was lost in a war, a reproduction was made and covered in gold leaf, standing to this day for all to see. In Angkor Wat, the Cambodians tell a tale through the form of dance, crying because their land was lost in the sea. The Tibetans have been called the Fire Clan, and they believe in a place called Shambhala, the entrance to which is nearby in the mountains, and a king of the world that resides there influencing our activities and decisions, as they strive to attain the rainbow body and to uphold the 4 noble truths. The Aborigines believe that a rainbow serpent, like a rainbow of light, moved over the land, reshaping it and molding it to create with abandon a place for our generations to enjoy, calling forth the animals and us from deep underground to populate the new landscape. The Mayans and Incas believe they came from a network of caves to re-inhabit the lands after losing their landmass under the ocean. The Druids of Europe never recorded their beliefs or histories, but by word of mouth, they have related their belief of coming from a mass of land that sunk beneath the ocean and having re-emerged from underground to populate a new place. Egyptians are said to believe they too came from a land that was lost to the sea. This belief is found again and again the world over, and I have barely scratched the surface. The Rosicrucians today believe we are connected to this other world, and that only those with the best of intentions will ever see it. Returning to where we began with the Hopi, we must ask ourselves what this mass of land was. This land was said to be in the Pacific Ocean under names such as Lemuria, Mu, Zu, Oz, Balutu, Rutas. It was inhabited by a population more advanced than our own. They lost their way and were warned their world would end in a great cataclysm. They did not believe it, and their entire continent was lost. It would seem that a second, smaller island, better known as Atlantis, suffered the same fate. They took refuge underground, surviving as the world was reconfigured. The Aborigines called this period between the dream time. The Hopi call themselves the record keepers, holding both our vast histories and a prophetic future. They too have an artifact from the old world they do not name and keep safe. They say that there are 3 other clans in other parts of the world that carried with them a totem of the old world, something by which, when reunited, would identify them. 1 clan in Africa, 1 in Switzerland, 1 in the north, and their own clan at the heart of the earth. It is noteworthy that in the land the Hopi and Navajo inhabit, there are strange beings and sightings, things we are hard-pressed to explain, things the likes of which I have covered in the Mothman Theory video. The structures and statues I mentioned at the start are mysterious in age, so old they predate our knowledge of who built them and why. Some even go so far as to claim that the pyramids of Giza were not built 3,000 years ago, but are much, much older. If we look at the time scale we have come to accept as true, we can say that it is divided into 4 sections. The Hadean, where evolutionists believe single-celled life began. The Archean, where the earliest form of oxygen came into existence, and plants used photosynthesis. The Proterozoic era, a time when an oxygen crisis happened. possibly when silica petrified just about everything, and the Phanerozoic, which is when multicelled life began. The dinosaurs existed, and later came mammalian life and flowers. But what do we really know? Our existence now is but a blip on the timescale. We can guess, theorize, look at rigid sets of written facts, but what do we actually know? When science becomes our only reality, but profit and greed dictate what we are taught, we enter a dark age, an age where true knowledge is kept locked away, and the masses are led to believe that we are the only ones to have lived on Earth. In the interest of remaining balanced, biblical texts must be considered as well. There are verses that say, "From dust you are, and to dust you will return." What if that could be interpreted as "From beneath the ground you came, and back under the ground you will return"? When it speaks of the coming destruction, it states that those who try to hide under the earth will not escape the day of destruction. Further, if taken chronologically, it would seem that the book of Revelations is describing previous wipes, with strange events and celestial bodies doing unusual things. It could be said that this describes something similar to what is happening in our skies now. With the Hopi claim that the earth has been cleansed 3 times before, each earthly culture holds its own belief that the 4th wipe will come with an age of enlightenment, that we will start again, but with knowledge of who we are and where we came from. The Hopi say we have a choice, that the prophetic timeline splits in 2. We can go on to our destruction, or we can change our ways and gain enlightenment and life. Governments point the finger at the population, telling us that we are the problem and that we should conserve more, go green, and turn off the light in the room before we leave it. The problem is much deeper, but they are right. It is up to us. Where corporations and greed lead to setting us up for failure, creating more garbage and waste with packaging materials, using up resources and polluting our water and air, telling us that overpopulation will lead to our demise, it all shows where the power truly lies, with us. We can choose who gets our money by what we spend it on. This will dictate what resources are used and how. Governments and corporations will be forced to recognize our power because they will either conform to meet our demands or fold and go under. Still, the biblical text, where it would seem that it tells us we will turn on fanatical religion that are false, and that we will turn on our money system to rid ourselves of the need for greed and profit, also tells us that it won't be enough to prevent the end. Something more is needed. But what? In my humble opinion, a peaceful change is what will save us. I believe this with all of my heart. If we choose war and violent revolution, we will meet our end. Just ask the Hopi. If what I have said is true, then what I have to say next might be disturbing. The final clue to this puzzle are fossil fuels. Fossil fuel can be defined as a hydrocarbon deposit such as petroleum, coal, or natural gas, derived from the accumulated remains of ancient plants and animals and used as fuel. This would indicate that these remains are millions of years old, biologic, and that they were organisms that lived, compressed under the earth until they became a form of combustible carbon. The first recorded use of fossil fuels dates back to 4000 BC in China, when they carved ornaments from black lignite and later mined coal seams to smelt copper. There are varied types of fossil fuels, depending upon their age, location, and form. Natural gas, or methane, which in modern times is known as biofuel from human and animal waste. Petroleum, or underwater sedimentary deposits from vast quantities of dead organisms, such as phytoplankton. And coal, a highly combustible material with uses that range from heating water to convert to power for large electrical grids, to graphite and pencils. These fossils pocket in areas and are non-renewable. Notably, there are large quantities of fossil fuels worldwide, and once they have been used up, that's it, until something else hits its millions of years mark. Were there that many dinosaurs? Are dinosaurs actually old enough to become fossil fuels when we are still finding intact skeletons? Why did the plants only pocket in certain places and all die in mass quantities at the exact same moment? Something is not adding up. What struck me like a ton of bricks was the notion that people are carbon-based organisms. We bury our dead in cemeteries or mass graves when plagues arise. Is it really so difficult to make the leap that the pockets might correlate to large past civilizations that existed millions of years ago, which then gave me that Soylent Green is people moment? You mean to tell me that our ancestors, of whom already left their carbon footprint, died, became a solid carbon mass, was dredged up from their ancient graves only to have a second go at making their carbon footprint without their consent? I can't even look at my pencil the same way. I might well be smearing my ancestors across the paper. We have geological records that something existed before us. Our land masses were once configured differently, with a unique weather pattern signature. We have histories and structures that show something we don't know the slightest thing about that once existed in massive cities. We also have stone records or stories passed down by those who chose to share them. And we have our own biologies. All of these are clues that represent a time before written record. The more I dug, the deeper the network of tunnels went. It was easy to lose sight of daylight and forget my way. We may well have survived 3 cataclysmic ends, or wipes, and are nearing the end of the 4th. A 4th that might be permanent if we make the wrong choice. It is as though everything were leading up to this moment, this calm before the storm. Our histories recorded in the lands in which we live. They may try to hide it or discredit new finds, but people like Scott Walter uncover new understandings every day. And in these discoveries we find ourselves and who we really are. Each land has its stories, and they have existed far longer than history allows. If we stop blindly accepting what we are given, we might just find our humanity, the perfect reason to choose the path of survival.